It's Summit Day over in Washington, D.C., where President Lee Jae-myung will meet U.S. President Donald Trump for their first summit. Much is riding on the meeting for both the leaders, from the security alliance to economic collaboration. While we wait for that historic moment, I am joined by experts and a reporter to delve into what is at stake. Joining us virtually is Professor Song Soo-young. All right, in the meantime, I will try to connect with Professor Song. I am joined by Mr. An Jung-sung. Welcome.
Thank you.
And also on my right is our foreign affairs correspondent, Oh Soo-young. Welcome, Soo-young.
Hi, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, it's a big day for President Lee Jae-myung and President Donald Trump. Now, here in this studio, we are still waiting for that moment to happen, but all eyes are on what the interaction is going to be like between the two leaders, right? Walk us through what it has been since Lee took office.
Right, Tammy. So I'm personally very excited to see how the two leaders are going to interact because their interactions so far have been very limited. They held one phone call after President Lee was inaugurated in early June, and
right.
that was mostly formalities, some pleasantries, some talk about golf, and they were supposed to hold a summit on the sidelines of the G7 meeting that very month, but it was abruptly cancelled because President Trump had to return to DC rather early from the G7 meeting, and since then there haven't been much success in arranging another summit between the two leaders, but it was very hastily prepared actually in the last few weeks after President Trump decided to rather unilaterally announce that he would meet with President Lee within a few weeks, right? So that was a lot of pressure, and now there's some concern that there's been perhaps a lack of coordination on the summit agenda and the outcome of the summit, which, as you know, Tammy, is always it's always fine-tuned before the actual leaders' summit, and they just put their pen to paper, right? And these fears were stoked when we saw Foreign Minister Cho Hyun head very early to DC ahead of the president last week. And in doing that, he skipped the Tokyo summit. So this triggers some concerns among diplomatic circles that the agenda, the outcome may not have been coordinated. And of course, a lack of coordination would be rather unnerving for Seoul officials, given President Trump's nature to be rather spontaneous and making unexpected announcements. So in fact, right before their summit, just hours before the summit, we saw President Trump making another announcement on Truth Social. His post was asking what is going on in South Korea, and he showed some concern towards on the part of the business community, and he didn't specify what it is, but if we were to guess, it might have something to do with the so-called yellow envelope bill.
That was at the parliament. Exactly.
That was, railroaded through by the majority party. And of course, the American Chamber of Commerce had actually expressed some concern about that bill. So yeah, we'll see what comes up in their talks.
Right, Soo-young, so we are just less than 10 minutes away from the summit between President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump. We head over to the White House, the summit venue, with our correspondent Yoon Jung-min standing live. Good afternoon for you, Jung-min.
Early good morning to you, Tammy.
So, Jung-min, like I said, we are all just waiting for the two leaders to appear in a matter of time now, right?
That is right, Tammy. So we expect the South Korean leader to arrive here at the White House at any moment. U.S. President Donald Trump will greet President Lee Jae-myung at noon local time, and they will hold a bilateral meeting at the Oval Office for about half an hour. Then the leaders will have lunch behind closed doors. We do not expect a joint press conference. It'll be their first in-person meeting.
The summit will serve to stabilize our economy and trade. Talks will also include modernizing the security alliance to bolster security and seek new economic cooperation structure involving shipbuilding, semiconductors, AI, nuclear energy, and defense R&D.
Now, Jung-min, let's go into the details. What sort of agenda are we expecting during the summit?
Tammy, a host of issues ranging from the allies' recent framework trade deal to defense spending and security. When it comes to modernizing the alliance, this was what President Lee had to say on his way to Washington.
위헌화에는 요구가 있는 건 사실이지만 또 우리 입장에서는 그렇게 쉽게 동의하기 어려운 문제라서 어쨌든 그러니까 주한미군의 좀 미래형 전략화 그런 얘기는 우리 입장에서 좀 필요해요.
Eyes are also on whether there will be talks on the North Korean nuclear issue and a potential revision to a bilateral nuclear energy pact.
Jung-min, now I do have to ask, what about the Allies' framework trade deal that was reached late last month?
We expect some of the details of the deal to be worked out at the top-level meeting. That includes details of the U.S. investment pledges made by Seoul worth $350 billion, which in return has lowered the Trump administration's tariffs on South Korea to 15%.
분명한 것은 대한민국도 하나의 주권 국가이고 주권 국가에서 우리 주권자들, 우리 국민들이 기대하는 바를 충족시키지는 못할지라도 최소한 실망하게 해드리지는 않아야 된다라는 그런 책임감을 가지고 있습니다.
When it comes to the possibility of the U.S. yet again demanding opening of Korea's agricultural and livestock markets, the South Korean leader said it's undesirable to reverse what's already been agreed. When asked how he has prepared for Trump's negotiation style, Lee said he has read The Art of the Deal written by Trump. We will have to see how things unfold this afternoon. And we just learned that Trump wrote on Truth Social ahead of the meeting that a, quote, purge or revolution is going on in South Korea, and the U.S. cannot do business there. It's still not clear what exactly he means by that, but he could happen referring to investigations over ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol for his martial law declaration last December. That is all from me at this hour. Back to you, Dami.
All right, Jung-min, thank you for that coverage. That was our Yoon Jung-min live from Washington, D.C. So in a matter of a moment, President Lee Jae-myung will be greeted by President Donald Trump at the White House. Back here in the studio, I'm joined by our foreign affairs correspondent, Oh Soo-young, and also Mr. An Jung-sung. So, Mr. An, let's talk about the timing of the summit between President Lee and President Trump. It is coming less than 3 months after Lee took office, right?
Yep. Well, excuse me. Today is his 82nd day of the office after inauguration. So if you compare with other 6 former presidents' data, it's about average about 61 days after inauguration. They have a first bilateral summit. However, so if you see the numbers only, well, that's a little bit later than the average. But well, interesting, some people might argue that on that point that it's been too late to have the bilateral summit meeting with the United States, because if you compare with the previous summit meeting, which was the former President Yoon Suk-yeol, this was only 11 days after his inauguration. However, if you go back to the time, and what happened was that it was conducted as the part of the President Biden's Asian trip. So Korea happened to be first stop, and then so it's more like a unilateral preparation by the White House, and then I think Joe Biden's perspective is whoever in the president, I will talk to say hi, right? It's not really much preparation made before on both sides. So I guess that if you if you compare with other former bilateral summit meetings, that's about every 70 days. So I think it's a little bit later than the average. And then even in most cases, South Korean president visited Washington, D.C., just like this case. But interesting that I found that the timing is not about actually U.S.-Korea issue. It's more like, I think time is of essence issue is that about the Korea and China issue. Actually, on the 24th, on the day he left, President Lee left for the Washington, he sent special envoy to the China.
He did.
Basically, so he asked them their convoy to hand deliver his personal letter to President Xi Jinping, basically according to the press, and he invited him to the upcoming APEC summit meeting in the coming October. So I guess we don't know whether he will coming, but I think that's a really good, sending clear message to both China, also the United States. And I think China, I guess, it's more like the August 21st was the 33rd anniversary of the normalization of the diplomatic relation between two countries. So basically, then President Lee sending message to the China. Well, although I'm physically visiting the U.S., I remember you and I respect our bilateral relationship. Right? That's a very good message. Also, it was a clear message to the United States saying, you're not the only ally in terms of trade situation, right. Because as you know, China is #1 trade partner, but U.S. is only #4 partner in terms of trade scale and trade volume. So I guess there's things have a lot of issues, and then perhaps that might really upset Trump and make him writing some truth social about whatever he's saying, what's going on. And I was thinking about that. Why if from Trump perspective, maybe he's kind of nervous in situation, because I don't think he never expect that there is the impeachment happen.
He didn't know
in
it
the old
coming.
process, because it never happened in the U.S., right?
Nobody knew.
So things happen. So maybe he was expecting maybe a different president.
Maybe
better deal with him, or perhaps easier deal. But now he knows that President Lee Jae-myung is the human rights activist and also lawyer. So it's going to be means that they're could be very complicated person so to deal with, rather than just former prosecutor, right?
Right.
So it's like it's very. I think in terms of prosecutor, it's more like a straightforward thinking. You say yes or no, guilty or not guilty, right? Basically, but the lawyer is thinking about a lot of different combination of situations. So and plus, I'm very interested to see how they interact in the beginning of their Oval Office, how they talk of each other. That would be the really very interesting point to see how the two leaders interact for the first time in person.
Right, because almost everybody in the world probably knows who Trump is, but not yet, know about who President Lee Jae-myung is. So maybe Trump is trying to get to know him at the summit, really what his characters are like, right?
And one of the things I want to see how they handshake too.
Oh, handshake, yeah, that's an interesting point that we have to look at.
Because last time the Putin recently showed like some
the tension, the tension.
So maybe the
real.
angle and whether it's showing his palms or something, direction of their hands, maybe showing some indications. We'll see how we do it.
And also, President Lee sending the delegation to China was strategically laid out. Now, speaking of that, Soo-young, the U.S. was not his first stop, obviously. Japan was his first stop. What kind of message do you think President Lee's Japan visit conveyed to Washington?
Well, Tammy, it was, as many observers noted, a very unprecedented move.
Indeed.
And I would say that it conveyed a very affirmative message that really shows how South Korea is firmly aligned with the US in the Indo-Pacific region. And while there were some concerns by US conservative groups, US hawks, who were very afraid that a progressive government in Korea would undermine their security cooperation with Seoul and Tokyo in the Indo-Pacific, because the support of its partners in this part of the world is essential to American interests, whether it's in economic security or, its priority in countering China's influence as well. So, and of course, progressive leaders in South Korea, they've been considered generally more hawkish, more dovish towards China. And they've also been, they also were known to rally their base against Japan over historical sticking points. So people in Washington were very concerned that Seoul-Tokyo tensions would be revisited, and that this triggering such tensions would, of course, again, compromise their security cooperation, the trilateral security cooperation. So President Lee Jae-myung, he basically did something that's, again, unprecedented but highly unexpected by meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba first, not only once but twice before he met with the US President, and not to mention Chinese President Xi Jinping, right? So a very unexpected move. And as National Security Advisor Wi Sung-lak said, this really shows that South Korea is not just, participating in trilateral cooperation, but it's leading trilateral cooperation by joining the dots, and it's no longer it should no longer be seen as the weakest link, but a very valuable asset and key partner for the US. So that kind of leverage is going to be very useful for President Lee when he's negotiating with Donald Trump.
Right, Japan's stop was not just random, but in fact it was strategically, planned out before the U.S. visit. Mr. An, one of the key agendas slated for the summit is alliance modernization. The question is, to how much extent do you think the two leaders will agree on, modernizing the alliance or Washington alliance?
Well, my personal view, unlikely, because their positions are too different. I think they are taking very strong position, both sides. And plus, personally, I think when I hear the expression modernizing the alliance, I was like, it's like I was very kind of laughing myself. So, what do you mean by modernizing alliance? Basically means that they take advantage of the U.S. forces in Korea to other, off-peninsula activity, right?
Right.
So that's really defeat the main purpose of the U.S. forces in South Korea, because they are here because to protect South Korea from any possible invasion from North Korea. But the only one in region. It's exclusive dealing. It's got more like a business perspective. But so why? And they want to change their terms of contract, and maybe then that means that they have to restart it over from the beginning, how we structure two country relations. That's a big story. And plus, if I know that Trump is a businessman. If you do a business deal and coming into contract negotiation, if you want to renew or revise your contract, you have to start from the beginning. And as everyone knows that the U.S. forces, although they're helping us they're protecting us from invasion possibly, but however, we're paying a lot of bills. But I guess there's differences between the Korea and U.S. is that the U.S. the Trump want pay. South Korea pay more, but South Korea say, well, we already paying too much.
Right.
That's a big difference in terms of number of money, how much you spend it. And it's very interesting. If they realize, if they really want to use that U.S. forces in Korea for off-peninsula activity, I guess they have to change the term of condition of their stay, because now they're using for their own purposes. Not for Korea, right? That means that I think that if from the business perspective, maybe they have to pay more. Actually, they have to pay South Korean government the way they're using their land and airspace, right?
Sounds more logical.
Yeah, that's the more business orientation, because if you see that the only reason they're staying here to protect Korea, there are so much exemptions and they got all the excuses. But if one day they say, oh, we do something other than our, protecting your peninsula. So why have to do this? So it means that from the business perspective, in terms of legal issue, maybe they have to sign up the new separate agreement, which has that under condition that the U.S. government have to pay for their state, all the maintenance, everything. Yeah, that's I think that's the business approach.
So they do need a new agreement to.
Yeah, for business perspective, if you talk about business, it's not a business, it's the politics. But also I think that from the South Korean president perspective, it's a big no-no, right? Because if we agree on any kind of deal, including modernization, that means I think it's more like a political suicide to him, because that his approval rate will plunge into the floor, right? And then the stock market will be crashing like boom. Yeah, I don't think he want to do it. And then even if he signed the deal, which include that modernization clause, that will be, I don't think that's going to happen to National Assembly, would not ratify any bill which enabling the modernization clause.
Right,
So,
it takes more than one day to pass such a bill, right?
or it's not a Monday. I mean, it's not going to happen. It's going to, and then it's more like a medical disease, deja vu could be, right? So there's too much political pressure on the president. And I think if I'm the president position, c'est la vie, there's some the red line he cannot cross, even a president, right? So we cannot cross the line. That's our limitation. We have it, constraint we have in the Korean political system. So I guess that's why Trump was not happy about this situation, because he tried to pressurize his counterpart, but. So basically, as your view at the airplane, right? In the President Lee mentions, I think he said, if not satisfy the citizen, we need at least not to disappoint the citizen. I think that's very clear message to U.S. president saying that we're not going to sign, we're not going to give our sovereignty power, and we will exercise our power and the best interest of people, not for the best interest of the United States. So I think that's why I'm really concerned about today's bilateral meeting, because they're very different position from the beginning. It's very hard to come to an agreement on any specific provisions on the topic. Right?
Well, we are still waiting for the Rok-U.S. summit to begin. In the meantime, also joining us virtually is Professor Song Soo-young. Hello there, Professor Song.
Hello, thank you for eventually I can participate in this discussion.
Well, we're going to have you jump into the discussion right away. Professor Song, now that South Korea and the U.S. have sealed a tariff deal, it's time to really fine-tune the details. What are some outstanding trade issues the two leaders are likely to discuss in the upcoming summit?
Actually, in August 1st, we have some favorable condition about the tariff because similar to the European Union and Japan. So that means a very not bad performance and success in terms of tariff, even though it is not written clearly. But I don't think even we have some written statement, it is not, it cannot be trustworthy because considering the characters of the President Trump. So I think this summit particularly is more focused on some issues that is well explained and illustrated and very by the Professor An and Oh Soo-young. And the reason is because the purpose of this summit and Trump's focus on the modernizing alliance and the China deterrence could be achieved or not. So to that regard is really very important. The economic issues not much of concern in this summit. Rather, so trade, tariff, and all those economic issues could be delayed or could be left for the working level discussion and the working level negotiation. So I would like to point out the very impressive point which was made by Professor An is because the modernization of the flexible strategy which is anticipated by President Trump, and also the U.S. FK, United States Forces Korea, the commander has requested some South Korea to participate in to allow the U.S. forces to operate and participate in the war outside Korea. So then he mentioned that we should change the rule or some kind of a treaty between the U.S. and Korea, for which has been effective for the past 75 years. So to that regard, that means that not only we have to pay the bill, and we must take the risk of being some kind of involved in the war, even though we do not want. So that implies rather than paying some increased defense bill, if the U.S. and the President Trump is really concerned about too much expense and Korea is exploit the free protection offered by the United States, I think I would rather offer them, why not withdraw their troops out of Korea and station those U.S. forces in Guam or Okinawa, wherever it is available. And that could save money for the U.S. And then South Korea, we could escape some kind of unnecessary and undesirable risk that is borne by some strategic flexibility.
Well, Professor Song, then I do have to ask you, Mr. An is rather pessimistic about, relocating or reusing USFK, United States Forces Korea to, pursue off-peninsula missions. And how likely do you think President Lee Jae-myung will get on board with that Trump's pursuit of, reusing USFK?
That reminds me of the situation when 20 years ago, our South Korean president, Roh Moo-hyun, has faced, come across with George Bush. And George Bush, the president, he was impressed how elaborate and President Roh has made efforts to secure and to save their countries. But right now we become one of some advanced country and developed countries, and also we have a very relatively strong military power and economic power. So economically, and we could cooperate and help the U.S. economy to recover, not only in shipbuilding but also some other advanced economic fields such as AI and some semiconductor issues. But politically and militarily, South Korea cannot bear the risk of facing the brunt of if war occurs, if China is engaged war against Taiwan, and then we should not face such a risk at all. So because it's perilous to us, and also that's why I believe that the President Lee Jae-myung has during his meeting with the reporters and correspondents during the flight to U.S., even he has mentioned he would like to crawl under the legs of Trump as long as he would like to save our countries. But he mentioned that he is not a pushover, so which means he's not easily persuaded, he is not easily to be treated. So to that regard, I believe and President Lee's capability, and he has such mental strength to overcome and to withstand the pressure from President Trump.
Well, this is the summit with U.S. President Donald Trump we're talking about. With President Trump's track record of engaging with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, we're waiting to see what kind of outcomes regarding North Korea will emerge. Soo-young, what has been the Lee administration's approach to North Korea policy?
Well, from the beginning of the Lee Jae-myung presidency, a series of actions have been taken to reassure Pyongyang, to convey the message that Seoul wants peace and would like to re-engage in dialogue. For instance, President Lee Jae-myung, on the 7th day of his presidency, just one weekend, he decided to dismantle the loudspeakers that blast anti-Pyongyang messages across the border. And that's something that the North has long considered, psychological warfare. So that was his first step. And since then, he's appointed a number of key officials who are very experienced in inter-Korean diplomacy and have been very vocal about reviving dialogue with Pyongyang. The unification minister, for instance, Chung Dong-young, who was appointed last month, he's actively called for the revival of inter-Korean hotlines, the revival of a 2018 September 19th deal to diffuse military tensions along the border. And he's gone as far as to actually call for Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, to attend the APEC leaders meeting, which South Korea will be hosting in October. So these are some bold steps. And President Lee himself, in his Liberation Day speech, he set out 3 commitments that he made towards the North. The first being that South Korea will respect the Kim Jong-un regime, and second, that it's not going to pursue, Seoul is not going to pursue unification by subjugating the North. under its system, and the last one being that South Korea won't engage in any hostile acts.
Right.
But at the same time, you do have to remember that President Lee, he has maintained firmness on deterrence and denuclearization. He's in fact introduced a three-stage process, the first being the freezing of North Korea's nukes. Second step would be reducing them, and the final one is dismantlement, of course. So
gradual steps.
Exactly. So South Korea is opening the door for dialogue, but also at the same time being realistic about the need for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Right. For our viewers who are just joining us, we are covering the live Rok-U.S. summit between South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump. We are still waiting for the two leaders to appear. In the meantime, we continue our discussion on the summit. Soo-young, you just talked about President Lee Jae-myung's approach to North Korea policy. Now, how has North Korea responded to, engaging with Seoul and Washington? And it has been vocal, though, right?
Yes, it's been the rhetoric from Pyongyang. It's been deeply sarcastic and dismissive, as one would rather expect coming from the North. When it comes to inter-Korean relations, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, a very powerful official there, said that South Korea cannot be a diplomatic counterpart to the North. And she's mostly criticized Seoul's military drills with the US being held in August, some delayed to September. So it's clear that Pyongyang is trying to make clear that it's perhaps not interested in dialogue with the South, but it would like South Korea to suspend its military drills with Washington, which is highly unlikely to happen. And well, when it comes to officials in Seoul, it seems that they're being quite clear-eyed about the outlook of inter-Korean dialogue. They've admitted that it may take more time for inter-Korean summits or dialogue to actually materialize. So in the meantime, they're expressing full support for US-North Korea talks to be revived instead. And meanwhile, in Pyongyang, North Korea has not ruled out the idea of resuming engagement with Washington. And again, Kim Yo-jong has said that if the US does not recognize the North as a nuclear state, then the hopes of holding a summit between the two leaders will only remain hopes. So she's not entirely ruling out dialogue there.
Right. Well, Mr. Ahn, I do have to ask, this summit, I'm sure President Lee and President Trump will take advantage of, finding a middle ground or maybe find a common ground when it comes to North Korea policy. What kind of North Korea approach do you think the two leaders will come up with?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I was thinking that they might have a same goal, but maybe they have different dreams.
Same goals, different dreams.
Yeah, they're different way, because I think the President Lee Jae-myung want to do more like internally, more like inter-Korea approach, something talking with directly bilateral
for the two
talk.
Koreas.
Yeah. But I think that maybe Trump thinking about something else. Maybe he want to maybe stop visit Pyongyang, right? He want to do something very interesting. I was thinking maybe, if you look at the Vietnam situation, right? When the Vietnam and US have a FTA, so maybe you can go to Pyongyang and sign an FTA with North Korea. Maybe everything changed, right? So a lot of things could happen. So I was wondering what kind of, Trump is the idea Trump having in his mind right now, because I think he might have some ideas, because he had talks, right, personal talk with Kim Jong-un. So a few times, so he knows what the other guy is thinking. So I guess that I like to see how he reacted also. But I think that in terms of North Korean perspective, I think the North Korean government is really not really, well designed, well structured. I think it's like almost like a high school, government or something. They don't even know what to do. If if I'm in the North Korean leadership side, I would suggest Kim Jong-un or someone to visit China, and or even the Russia, to showing up their relationship, maybe from their traditional relationship tie or the military alliance with their allies. But what is doing now? Just making some bad comments against President Lee, and I think that's all they can do right now. That's very, very sad for them, because they don't have much card to play at this moment. And plus, I don't think Chinese government try to get closer to North Korean government any longer, because they're bring more trouble. than to China, actually. So I guess that China can be the gateway to North Korea. And whenever we are to push North Korea to some direction, maybe China could be a good partner, helping us, side by side, pushing, pressurizing North Korea to do something or prevent them making some, something, nuclear, weapons or something, plans, something like that. I think in that point, I think we need China on our side to be a good friend and good partner for diplomatic and all the regional security issues.
Right. Well, Professor Song, I'm sure you're there listening to our conversation. President Lee's shown that he's fully cooperating with the business delegations ahead of the summit with the U.S. A group of business leaders are tagging along now. What makes this approach necessary?
I think he would like to offer more very attractive economic bait, I'd like to say, because lures. Or the reason is because President Lee Jae-myung would like to focus on the economic issues when he met President Trump. The reason is clearly he would like to avoid the political issues such as strategic flexibility and some defense burden sharing in the USFK in Korea. So that's why he dispatched the delegates from the business leaders from South Korea and tried to attract the President Trump's attention to the shipbuilding issues and some other issues. And even, as far as I know correctly, that President Lee would like to offer some additional, in addition to $350 billion investment, additional $150 billion investment could be offered to the United States. And so economic forward. So I got the impression that the President Trump's it was that some message from the Truth social media, and as he has mentioned, seems like a purge or revolution in South Korea, and then we can't have that and do business there.
Right.
So at first I got the impression this was because he has a political problem in Washington, D.C. Now because he has deployed some armed forces in Washington, D.C. And so I saw some the Secretary Hexas and other others, and Vice President Vance has come and made very strong remarks against the U.S. citizens, and even they called communists. So that's, at first I thought is because he had a problem in the U.S., and then anyway, the purge or revolution is conducted in the South Korea. So that may be what he would like to do in the U.S. So, but many other reporters and some scholars has mentioned that this is a kind of a critique against the South Korea and the President Lee. So I was a little bit confused, but at least how to interpret his intention, that is, we have to wait and see the outcome of the summit meeting. And then at first I heard that there is no joint conference or joint statement. It will not be issued.
Right, as of now.
Right, as of now. So I don't know how it will be played out, but I hope, regardless of whether we have a joint statement, it is non-binding. So therefore, all the economic and the tariff-related issues or the investment issues, they should be discussed or negotiated in the working level officers, because at this summit level, that is actually too beyond the scope of the discussion. So I would like to just focus on some political issues, how to overcome the pressure from President Trump, and that is a point of interest right now at the summit meeting.
Well, Professor Song, is there any way Trump may be looking to get the upper hand in negotiations through that tweet? What do you think?
Yeah, clearly, he is the president of the United States, right? Therefore, he must have the upper hand. But President Lee has some strength to withstand. And then, at least he should be calm and collected. And then I wish he would like to talk about some economic issues and how much benefit could be offered to the United States, as long as, and also the balance of between China and the United States is indispensable for the South Korea. That should be assured by Donald Trump.
Right.
Trump should be assured of that. So President Lee make efforts, and so through the interpreter, translator, and that should be conveyed to the President Trump. And then, anyway, we are in the closest and the neighboring country to China, but United States are far away, halfway around the earth. So that should be understood by the President Trump. And also, the U.S. forces in Korea is just at the brunt and the nearest point. If there is a war against Taiwan and war between the U.S. and China, the U.S. forces in South Korea, particularly in Pyeongtaek, would be the first place to be bombarded by China. So to that regard, it's better for U.S. to withdraw their troops as long as they want to save money, and economically, that is politically much a better way for the U.S. So this could be and could end up with some mutually win-win.
Hopefully.
And hopefully, so South Korea could secure some kind of a peaceful situation, and also United States, while maintaining some deterrence against China, and they could save their armed forces and they can save money. So why not?
Well, now that Professor Song has mentioned China, Soo-young, I'd like to turn to you. The meeting between President Lee and President Trump is bound to trigger a reaction from China, of course. How do you think the Lee administration is managing these tensions, Soo-young?
Well, that's a good question, and I think President Lee has now arrived at the White House.
Now we are detecting some unusual move at the scene. Finally, it looks like somebody has arrived. Oh, there we see U.S. President Donald Trump. We are seeing President Lee Jae-myung shaking hands with U.S. President Donald Trump.
Right, for the first time.
For the first time, face to face.
Official meeting of the two leaders.
Right, as usual, he is in his red tie, and it looks like President Lee Jae-myung was also in a burgundy tie, right?
Yes, that's right. So color coordinating already, maybe an early indicator of a successful summit, one would hope.
You know, outfits are important.
They are very important indeed. And really looking forward to what kind of chemistry they're going to have. As mentioned, President Trump, he's very spontaneous, and he's been known to make very random announcements, unexpected by the other party. But on the other hand, though, President Lee Jae-myung is very known for keeping a very cool head among heated discussions. And as a politician, he's very calm, and he's good at responding very quickly, very sharply to unexpected situations. So, and he's not one to bow to pressure either. So it's going to be quite interesting how the negotiations turn out.
Right. We are now seeing a group of delegations from both the U.S. side and South Korean side entering to join President Lee Jae-myung and President Donald Trump. They will be holding their meetings, discussions there for about 30 minutes, right?
That's right. And once again, so many things to talk about. Who knows where to start?
Right. Mr. An, we just watched President Lee Jae-myung shaking hands, President Donald Trump for the first time. I know it was very brief, but what did you think of that scene?
Interesting.
Yeah?
Because they remember their face?
They looked
Lee Jae-myung
happy.
was smiling.
They both were smiling.
I don't think Trump was smiling.
Really? Maybe I missed it.
The way I saw it is like he wasn't happy situation.
Okay.
Yeah, my impression was like I think he had more pressure now because that Lee Jae-myung is not an easy person to play with. So it's like he realized that it's not an easy person to play with. So he gonna be so much pressure because he basically, he talked big. We'll do so much things, for the U.S. economy, and then if he coming out of the bilateral meeting with empty-handed, that would be very big shame.
No, I agree with you, Professor An, because Trump, he doesn't seem happy at all. We just got some news in that President Trump, he seems to have elaborated on what he posted earlier on True Social, where he asked what on earth is going on in South Korea, right? It seems that he's claimed that there were raids on churches over the last few days organized by the new government in South Korea, and he's claiming that the government has gone into the American military base to get information, and he says they shouldn't have done that, but I hear bad things. He doesn't know whether it's true or not, but he wants to find out. So perhaps he'll be asking President Lee Jae-myung straight up. That should make for quite an awkward situation. I'm sure our government doesn't organize raids into churches or, and the US is our ally, so we definitely wouldn't be sneaking into their military base to infiltrate their ranks and gain information, right? So something that he'll definitely need to fact check, and hopefully the president will set the record straight. And he says there's a new president coming in just a couple of hours, and he looks forward to meeting him. So it's going to be an interesting meeting, and
we'll have to wait for more details on that.
Sure, yes.
Well, these were the first impressions from Mr. An and our Oh Soo-young, but let's turn to Professor Song. Professor Song, what did you think of the first interactions, the first face-to-face interactions between President Lee and President Trump?
Yes, because I just see this the moment through the computer screen, so it's not clear to me. But at least I recognize President Lee is showing some greens, and he feels like he would like to he had some confidence and then remain calm. And even though the President Trump did not show some kind of hospitable smiles at all, but even he raised the hand and shows very confident face on confident grin on his face. So look at President, as Professor An has mentioned, Donald Trump is not at all smiling.
Right, he doesn't look the happiest.
Right. So to that, it means that at least President Lee has some upper hand.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, this summit is turning to be a whole unexpected one from the get-go, as we all expected, right? Well, I'd like to turn to you, Mr. An. President Lee is likely to invite President Trump to the APEC Korea 2025 this fall, right?
Yeah, I suppose so, because the APEC meeting, right?
He will be making it, right?
I'm not sure. Actually, one of the things I'm really curious about is whether the President Xi Jinping coming.
Exactly.
Might be, I think it's more bigger highlight than President Trump.
Bigger
coming.
guest, maybe?
Yeah, because that the Trump is become a common enemy. So all in the state of all states have like you talk about, and plus the reason he stopped over Tokyo is try to get information from the Prime Minister of Japan, right? So how to negotiate it. I think one of the tactics Trump will use it. He gonna play with some data or information he got from Japan. So we would say, Japanese government, provide this, offer this, and you should be better, give me better, because we are ally. something like that. But now, however, I think that the Lee Jae-myung read the card already. Also, they talk. They indeed what kind of things they deal, they traded. So, and this, I think that maybe Lee Jae-myung have upper hand in terms of the dealing with about in detailing the numbers in terms of how much money actually how you're gonna write in the contract or any clause. That might be the big help from the Prime Minister of Japan.
Well, that's an interesting point. Soo-young, you wrote a report today on if this summit between President Lee and President Trump will lead to reviving dialogue with Pyongyang. Now, what did you have to say?
Well, President Trump, he had dialogue with the leader of North Korea on 2 major occasions, and their third brief meeting at the inter-Korean border of Panmunjom that led to no real outcome. And since 2019, there's been no US-North Korea summit or dialogue. And along with that, South Korea's engagement with the North it's been dwindling as well. So with President Trump very eager to have his chances of getting a Nobel Peace Prize, he would be very interested in holding a very high-profile picture-op with Kim Jong-un, I'm sure. But will it actually lead to dialogue? We have to wait and see. For now, the Russia-Ukraine war is ongoing, and North Korea, of course, is a major arms supplier to Russia and sending their soldiers as well. So they have a major stake in this war. It's keeping their economy growing. So they really have not much incentive to have dialogue with the US. But if the war comes to an end, however, that might be a different story. And you were mentioning the possibility of President Trump attending the APEC summit, the Economic Leaders Meeting in South Korea. And again, as Professor Ahn mentioned, it's rather uncertain at this point, especially with President Trump looking quite angry upon his meeting with President Lee, right? But what some inter-Korean diplomacy advocates have been calling for in Seoul is for President Trump to actually meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, whether it's in the border area or at the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. But again, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, that's going to make it highly unlikely.
It's no breaking news that Trump is looking for a Nobel Peace Prize in North Korea. Professor Song, what will be President Trump's best bet to get that Nobel Peace Prize that he wants?
At first, I think the ultimate goal, and Trump aspires Nobel Prize, is because he would like to have some kind of feudal dynasty in the United States, which means that not only he would like to have another term for U.S. president, and also he would like to make his son to become a senator or some kind of very renowned politician. So to that regards, he would like to have he needs some Nobel Prize. So that is a really attractive goal to achieve, and for Trump to have some very strong Trump houses as a dynasty. So I think the United States will become most likely to become some kind of feudal kingdom in the future. But let alone that issue, I would like to say the APEC issues, whether the President Trump would like to attend APEC in October in Gyeongju in South Korea. And I think most unlikely. The reason is because APEC is some Asia-Pacific economic cooperation institution. So now he has, as the Professor Ahn mentioned, he has become a common adversary, enemy, and all over the countries. And he has imposed so high level of the tariff against most of the countries surrounding the Pacific areas. So Vietnam and the Philippines and other countries has a much higher tariff than Korea and Japan and than EU. So that's why he has no any incentive to participate in APEC unless he would like to have some favorable political situations and to expand his political influence.
Well, that's a big crowd. This is a very large crowd. You get more than most countries, I have to say. This is a very good crowd of the media. It's an honor to be with President Lee of South Korea. We've known each other and gotten along very well. We have some additional trade because I hear they want to renegotiate the deal, but that's okay. I don't mind that. That doesn't mean they're going to get anything, but I don't mind. But we're going to have some very serious discussions about different things, including trade, where we do a lot of trade with South Korea, as you know. We are thinking about contracting some ships. They build them very well in South Korea. They're also thinking about coming to our country with some shipyards to start us on the process of building ships again. You know, at World War II, we'd build a ship a day. And today we don't build ships anymore, which is ridiculous. We're going to start that again. But we were like you. We were building ships all the time for everybody. And presidents and people allowed that to slip by. And now we buy ships, but we're going to be buying ships from South Korea, but we're also going to have them make ships here with our people, using our people. And we're going to go back into the shipbuilding business again, because really, essentially, we don't build ships anymore, which is ridiculous how that ever happened. But we were the best at it, and you can take a look at World War II in particular, where we were doing virtually a ship a day. And it's hard to believe these were tankers and different kinds of ships, but we were very active. And you see a lot of those shipyards sitting there idle, but they're not so idle anymore. And you're going to come in also, and you're going to be doing a lot of ships in this country, so I look forward to that. But we have a lot of other trade things. They're a big purchaser of our military equipment. We make the best military equipment in the world, and you saw that recently with take a look at what we did with the B-2 bomber, which you have one right there. They gave that to me. I guess the company gave that to me. The B-2 bomber was so successful in what took place in the little excursion that we made, 36 hours, and it wiped out nobody's ever seen anything like it. 36 hours back and forth. Not a thing went wrong. Not a screw was missing. Not a bolt was missing. Not a plane had not even a little bit of a problem. And we actually had 52 tankers. We had many planes, but you know, you looked at the B-2, the way they handled that. Every single bomb hit its target. So they understand that we make the best military equipment in the world, and South Korea is a big buyer of military equipment. And we're going to talk about that also. And we have many things to talk about, and I look forward to it. And it's a great honor to be with you, and congratulations on your election. That was a big one. And we're with you 100%. Thank you.
네, 이재명 대통령님 오늘 백악관에 오신 것을 진심으로 환영합니다. 우리 그 양국 정상들 사실 서로 잘 알고 있습니다. 지금까지도 잘 지내고 있습니다. 제가 알기로는 한국 측에서 어떤 추가적인 그런 그 관세 협상에 대해서 좀 관심이 있다고 하는데 괜찮습니다. 뭐 원한다고 다 줄 것은 아니지만 그렇다고 그 요청하는 것은 받아들이겠습니다. 오늘 우리는 여러 가지 주제를 다룰 예정입니다. 일단은 먼저 무역에 대해서 얘기를 할 것입니다. 한국은 상당한 많은 그런 무역량을 미국과 함께 하고 있습니다. 그 외에 또 선박 계약, 특히 한국은 조선업이 상당히 성공적으로 유지가 되고 있습니다. 그래서 조선소라든지 선박 건조에 대해서 우리는 많은 얘기를 나눌 것입니다. 사실 미국은 제2차 세계대전 때 선박을 하루에 한 개씩 건조하는 그런 굉장히 성공적인 선박업을 운영하고 있었습니다. 그런데 이제 미국은 선박이 굉장히 아주 폐쇄한 그런 상황입니다. 하지만 이제 우리가 한국에서 선박을 구매해야 되겠죠. 그렇지만 앞으로 한국과의 협력을 통해서 미국에서 선박이 다시 건조되기를 바라고 있습니다. 그럼으로써 또 미국의 조선업을 한국과 협력해서 부흥하는 그러한 기회를 갖게 되기 바랍니다. 아까도 말씀드렸습니다만 제2차 세계대전 때 미국은 하루에 한 개 선박을 건조했습니다. 그렇지만 지금 미국의 조선선은 상당히 황폐해져 있는 상황입니다. 그렇지만 한국이 와서 우리가 함께 재건하기 바랍니다. 또 하나 우리가 의논해야 될 일은 군사장비 구매에 대한 것입니다. 미국은 세계 최고의 군사장비를 만듭니다. B-2 버머 같은 것은 보셨겠지만 굉장히 성공적이었습니다. 이번에 최근에 그런 작전에서 이 B2 범어가 왕복 36시간을 비행을 했는데 전혀 아무런 문제 없이 임무를 마치고 성공적으로 다시 돌아온 것입니다. 거기에는 또 52개의 탱커도 들어갔습니다. 하지만 어쨌든 그 괌이라든지 추격기 최고의 군사 장비를 가지고 있습니다. 한국이 이러한 미국의 아주 뛰어난 군사 장비를 많이 구매할 것을 기대하고 있습니다. 오늘 다시 한번 이재명 대통령을 백악관에 모시게 된 것을 매우 영광으로 생각합니다. 그리고 그 전에 아주 선거에 이긴 것을 다시 한번 축하드립니다. 감사합니다.
네, 대통령님 감사드립니다. 이렇게 시간을 내주셔서 우리 대한민국 국민을 대표해서 감사 말씀을 드리면서 우리 대통령께서 이 오벌 오피스를 새로 꾸미고 있다는데 정말로 밝고 황금색으로 빛나는 게 정말 보기 좋습니다. 품격이 아주 있어 보이고 미국의 새로운 번영을 상징하는 것 같습니다.
Mr. President, let me begin by thanking you on behalf of the Korean people. I would like to thank you for giving your time for today's meeting. And I heard that you recently redecorated the Oval Office, and I would like to say that it looks very bright and beautiful, and it has the dignity of America, and it symbolizes the new future and prosperity of America.
미국을 다시 위대하게 만드는 것이 우리 대통령님의 꿈인데 미국이 다시 위대하게 변하고 있는 것 같고 그게 다우존스 지수에서도 그게 나타나는 것 같습니다. 제가 보니까 사상 최고치를 경신하고 있던데 오늘은 잠깐 조정되고 있지만 아주 훌륭하게 미국이 다시 위대해지고 있는 것 같습니다.
I believe that making America great again is your goal, and I believe that that is what is currently taking place in America. And I think the most symbolic thing of that is the Dow Jones Index, which reached a record high recently, although it went down a bit, but it reached a record high. And so I think that America is becoming great again.
말씀하신 조선 분야뿐만이 아니라 제조 분야에서 르네상스가 이루어지고 있고 그 과정에서 대한민국도 함께 하게 되길 기대합니다.
So I believe that there is a renaissance taking place not only in the shipbuilding sector but also in the manufacturing industry, and I hope that Korea can be a part of that renaissance.
그리고 또 한 가지 제가 꼭 말씀드려야 될 것이 대통령님의 평화를 지키는 기간의 미국의 역할을 넘어서서 새롭게 평화를 만들어가는 피스메이커로서의 역할이 정말로 눈에 띄는 것 같습니다.
And one thing that I wanted to say to you is that America's role not as a keeper of peace, but a maker of peace, is being more is emerging more evidently.
유럽, 아시아, 아프리카, 중동 뭐 여러 곳에서의 전쟁들이 이제는 트럼프 대통령님의 역할로 휴전하고 평화가 찾아오고 있습니다.
Many wars in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and in the Middle East are coming to peace because of the role that you are playing.
세계 지도자 중에 전 세계의 이런 평화 문제에 대통령님처럼 이렇게 관심 가지고 실제로 성과를 낸 경우는 처음으로 보이십니다.
So among the many world leaders, I believe that you are the only leader who has made such accomplishments.
그리고 가급적이면 전 세계에서 유일하게 분단 국가로 남아 있는 한반도의 그 평화를 좀 만들어 주셔서 김정은과도 만나시고 북한에 트럼프 월드도 하나 지어서 거기서 저도 골프도 칠 수 있게 해주시고 그래서 전 세계가 인정하는 정말 세계사적인 평화의 메이커로서의 역할을 꼭 해주시기를 기대합니다.
And I would like to mention that the only remaining divided nation in the world is the Korean Peninsula, and I would like to ask for your role in establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula. So I look forward to your meeting with Chairman Kim Jong-un and construction of a Trump Tower in North Korea and playing golf at that place.
아마 기다리고 있을 것 같습니다.
다시 한 번만.
기다리고 있을 것 같습니다.
So I believe he will be waiting for you.
그리고 마지막으로 든든한 한미 동맹을 기반으로 대한민국이 성장 발전해 왔고 앞으로도 이 한미 동맹을 군사 분야뿐만이 아니라 경제 분야 또 다른 과학 기술 분야까지 다 확장해서 미래형으로 발전시켰으면 좋겠습니다.
Korea was able to attain economic growth and development through our ironclad alliance. And going forward, I hope to develop our alliance into a future-oriented alliance that encompasses areas not only limited to security, but also the economy and science and technology.
대한민국 국민들은 트럼프 대통령님에 대해서 정말로 큰 기대를 가지고 있다는 말씀을 드리면서 다시 한번 이런 시간 내주셔서 감사드립니다.
The Korean people have great expectations for you, Mr. President. Thank you once again for your time.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. I will say that Kim Jong-un and I had a very good relationship, as you remember, and still do. And when I came in, I didn't know him. We had 2 summits, but we became very friendly. Respect. It was great respect. And it was not going to be that way had Hillary Clinton won the election. It would have been a disaster. But we think we can do something in that regard with respect to North and South, and I think you are much more prone to doing that than other leaders that I've been working with from South Korea. And we'll work on that. I think it's very good to work on that. If you remember, you were doing the Olympics, and there was a great time of hostility with North Korea, and you weren't selling tickets because nobody wanted to be blown up in the stadium during the opening ceremonies, right? And you were not selling tickets. And I was also at my formative stage with North Korea and Kim Jong-un, and we were a little bit going at it about Rocket Man, Little Rocket Man, everything back and forth, and it was really nasty. And then I got a call one day, and they wanted to get together, they wanted to talk, and we started talking. And then he said really brilliantly, he said, you know, the Olympics is going to be opening very soon, and we'd like to be a part of it. They actually put teams in it. You got along great. And by the way, immediately upon that phone call, you started selling tickets, and it turned out to be a tremendous success. So it went from being empty stadiums because people were afraid to go, because it was a target potentially, to a great success. And I was very proud of that. You had one of the most successful Olympics, and now we have the Olympics coming to the U.S., so we're very happy about that. But that was a great honor to get involved and make the Olympics so successful.
네, 대단히 감사합니다. 다시 한번 모시게 돼서 영광이라고 말씀드리겠습니다. 제가 김정은 위원장과 굉장히 좋은 관계를 가지고 있습니다. 그리고 현재도 매우 좋은 관계가 있습니다. 내가 처음에 취임하고 난 다음에 2번의 정상회담을 김정은 위원장과 함께 했고 상당히 친해졌고 또 더 중요한 것은 둘 다 존경심을 서로에게 가지고 있다는 것입니다. 만일 힐러리 클린턴이 대통령으로 당선했다면 절대 그러한 상황까지 이루지 않았을 것입니다. 제가 보기에는 이재명 대통령께서 한국의 어느 지도자보다도 북한에 좀 더 문제를 해결하고자 하는 의지가 있는 그러한 대통령이라고 생각합니다. 그래서 어쩌면 우리가 함께 노력한다면 어느 정도 진전이 있을 수도 있겠습니다. 사실 그 한국에서 올림픽이 열렸을 때 북한 때문에 많은 사람들이 올림픽 표를 사지 않는 그런 현상이 생겨났었습니다. 그런데 김정은 위원장이 그때 사실은 김정은 위원장과 초기에는 제가 별로 사이가 좋았던 것은 아닙니다. 서로 라켓맨이라고 부르면서 주고받는 그러한 그 해프닝도 있었습니다. 그런데 어느 날 통화를 시작하게 되었고 통화를 하면서 그가 얘기를 했습니다. 한국에서 올림픽이 곧 열리는데 우리 그 북한도 참가하겠다. 그렇게 얘기를 했습니다. 그리고 그 통화 직후에 올림픽표가 많이 팔리기 시작했습니다. 그리고 한국의 올림픽은 올림픽 역사상 가장 성공적인 올림픽으로 지금 기록되고 있습니다. 또 우리 미국도 곧 올림픽을 주최할 예정입니다. 그래서 우리도 미국에서 성공적인 그런 올림픽을 주최할 계획을 가지고 있습니다.
김정은 위원장 말씀을 하셔서 그런데 사실 대통령님 덕분에 이 북한하고 이 한반도 관계가 매우 안정적이었습니다. 그런데 사실 그 이후 대통령께서 미국 정치에서 잠깐 물러서 있는 그 사이에 사실은 북한의 미사일도 많이 개발됐고 핵폭탄도 많이 늘어났고 진척된 것도 없이 한반도 상황은 정말로 많이 나빠졌죠.
Mr. President, you mentioned about Chairman Kim, and thanks to your efforts when you were in office during your first term, the situation on the Korean Peninsula was stable. But during the hiatus where you were out of office, North Korea developed further its nuclear and missile capabilities, and that led to a deterioration on the situation of the Korean Peninsula.
And they wouldn't have done that. They would not have done that if I were president. That was not going to happen.
대통령이 당선되었다면 그런 일이 일어나지 않았을 것입니다.
전적으로 공감합니다.
I completely agree with you.
그래서 지금 얼마 전에 김여정이 미국과 저를 비난하는 발언을 할 때도 대통령과 김정은 위원장의 특별한 관계에 대해서는 의심하지 않는다 이런 표현을 했습니다. 기다리고 있다는 뜻으로 보여졌습니다.
So when Kim Yo-jong, the deputy director of the Workers' Party of Korea, issued a statement denouncing South Korea, she mentioned about the not bad relationship between you and Chairman Kim Jong-un, and I believe that this is a sign that North Korea is waiting.
한반도의 평화의 새 길을 꼭 열어주시기 바랍니다.
So I hope that you will usher in a new era of peace on the Korean Peninsula.
I will do that, and we'll have talks. He'd like to meet with me. He didn't want to meet with Biden because he had no respect for Biden, but we look forward to meeting with him, and we'll make relations better. You'll help that. You had a lot of leaders. I've gone through a lot of leaders in South Korea. You know, it's been quick. You'll be there for a long time. But we, in the various leaders that I've dealt with, they were not approaching it properly, in my opinion, having to do with North Korea. But I think your approach is a much better one.
네, 그렇게 하도록 하겠습니다. 김 위원장이 바이든 전 대통령을 만나고 싶죠 하지는 않았지만 말은 만나고 싶어 할 것 같습니다. 그래서 그런 그 시도를 하겠고요. 내가 한국의 지도자들을 여러 번을 만나봤는데 제 개인적인 생각으로는 대북 정책이 그렇게 적절하지 않지 않았나 하는 생각이 듭니다. 그래서 이 대통령께서 그 적절한 대북 정책을 통해서 좀 더 그 진전이 있었으면 하는 생각입니다.
저의 관여로 남북 관계가 잘 개선되기 쉽지 않은 상태인데 실제로 이 문제를 풀 수 있는 유일한 인물이 트럼프 대통령이십니다.
So resolving this issue through my engagement is not an easy thing. And the only person that can make progress on this issue is you, Mr. President.
대통령께서 피스메이커를 하시면 저는 페이스메이커로 열심히 지원하겠습니다.
So if you become the peacemaker, then I will assist you by being a pacemaker.
That's good. We can do big progress, I think, with North Korea. Absolutely.
네, 북한에 대해서 큰 진전을 함께 이루어 나갈 수 있다고 믿습니다.
감사합니다.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good job. Okay, questions, please.
Mr. President, when you met with Russian President Vladimir Putin, how soon did he say that he wanted to sit down with Ukrainian President Zelensky? Russia, as of now, says there's no meeting on the books and no agenda is set.
Well, that's going to be up to them. It takes two to tango, I always say it. And they should meet, I think, before I have a meeting and probably close the deal. But I think it's appropriate they meet. They do not exactly get along well, as you can understand. And I'm sure it's a meeting that perhaps he didn't like. But he wasn't happy about coming to the United States either. That was a big concession, and I appreciate the fact that he did. You know, I've always had a very good relationship, despite a fake Russia haunt that we had. But we've always had a great relationship, very good relationship, strong relationship with Russia. That's a good thing, not a bad thing, by the way. That's a very good thing. And it's good to get along with Kim Jong-un, and it's good to get along with everybody, including President Lee. It's good to get along, and I get along with the foreign leaders. You see that with the biggest group of foreign leaders that we've ever had. Don't forget the European Union was here also representing a large group of countries just recently. So I believe that we're going to get that war straightened out. We're going to get it done. I don't know that they'll meet. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. They'd like me to be at the meeting. I said, you guys ought to work it out. It's between you. It's not us. Now, in the meantime, we're not spending any money on, as you know, on Ukraine. We're selling military equipment to NATO. NATO now is taking in, NATO now is taking in a large amount of money from the countries. They're taking in 5% of GDP versus 2%. They're paying the 5%. They never paid the 2%, most of them or a lot of them. NATO has a lot of money. We are selling military equipment to NATO at full price. And NATO's distributing that equipment to wherever they are, I mean, perhaps to Ukraine. So NATO's working with Ukraine. Biden was giving hundreds of billions of dollars, just willy-nilly, just giving money. He had no idea where it was going. It was terrible what was happening. So we're not involved anymore in terms of the cost. We're in for $350 billion. As you know, I also got the rare earth deal done with Ukraine, which was worth much more than the $350 billion. But I'm not interested in the money so much, even though we've done a great job in that regard. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in stopping a war where last week 7,109 soldiers died, both Russian and Ukraine. It's such a waste of life and humanity. They're not from this country. They're not from any other country other than Ukraine, for the most part, other than Ukraine and Russia. But it's a very important thing to me to stop it. I stopped 7 wars that were raging, one for 31 years, the Congo, and as you know, Rwanda, one for 35 years. I don't have to go into them. You know the list better than I do. But we stopped a lot of wars, including, you think about it, India and Pakistan, which was probably 2 weeks away from being a nuclear war. They were shooting down airplanes all over the place. So I'm very proud of that. I thought this would be, in many ways, the easiest way. I have a very good relationship with Putin. I thought it would be the easiest one to stop, and it's really not. It's very complex. It's very personal from their standpoint. There's tremendous dislike personally between the two men, and we're going to have to straighten that out. But I would like to see them meet first. They'd like me to be there. I may be there. I may not. I'll see. But I wanted them to work out their differences first, because it is ultimately between them. And when that happens, I think we'll get an end.
Mr. President, maybe they meet, maybe they don't. How long are you willing to let this play out? And if they don't meet, will there be consequences, and how soon for Russia?
Yeah, there could be very big consequences, but we'll see what happens. There might be very big consequences, because this is something that has to end. This war would have never taken place, and for 4 years it didn't take place. But if I were president, this war would have never taken place. There has not been a war like this since the Second World War. This is the biggest thing that's happened in terms of warfare, wars. It's a whole new form of fighting. It's a drone fighting. It's a drone war. No, a drone war never existed before. And we're actually studying it from the standpoint of Pete Hegseth and everybody. We're studying it and studying it very carefully. This is a whole new form of war, but it's a violent war, and there has been nothing like this since the Second World War. So we'll see what happens over the next week or two, and at that point I'll step in very strongly, and if I have to be there, I'll be there. And we'll either have a deal or we won't. But a lot of people are dying, and I want to get us.
Mr. President, Kim Jong-un wants to meet. When do you want to meet with him?
With who?
You said the North Korean leader wants to meet. How soon would you?
Yeah, we want to have a meeting. I like to have a meeting. I got along great with him. You know, you were there. We even had a press conference. He had his first press conference. Kim Jong-un had a press conference. This was a little different press conference. I said, have you done a press conference before? No. And you know what? He did great. It was a great press conference, actually. It was historic. I doubt he's done one since. But I said, would you like to meet the fake news? Because whatever you want to do. And they came in like you've never seen anything like it. And then he said, enough. And that was the end. That was the end. It ended very rapidly. But I think he had a good time. I look forward to meeting with Kim Jong-un in the appropriate future.
Will you reduce the number of forces in South Korea so that the United States can have more flexibility in the region?
Say it.
Would you consider reducing the number of U.S. forces in South Korea so that the United States can have more flexibility?
Well, I don't want to say that now, because we've been friends and we're friends. And look, we have a lot of people over there. We have over 40,000 troops in South Korea. As you know, South Korea agreed to pay for that during my last term. And then when Biden came in, they complained to Biden that I wasn't a nice person. And he agreed not to pay. He gave up billions of dollars. We were getting paid billions of dollars. But then Biden ended that for whatever reason. It's unbelievable that he did. But we have a very good relationship militarily. They would say, but we gave you land. I said, no, you didn't. You lease us land. There's a big difference between giving and leasing. And maybe one of the things I'd like to do is ask them to give us ownership of the land where we have the big fort. You know, we spent a lot of money building a fort, and there was a contribution made by South Korea, but I would like to see if we could get rid of the lease and get ownership of the land where we have a massive military base.
Mr. President, how are you? Thank you, Mr. President. How are you planning to make? I also want to ask this question to Mr. President.
Who you with?
I'm Song Mi-jin. I am from South Korea's Arirang TV.
Good.
Thank you so much. So, as mentioned earlier, United States is South Korea's most important and closest ally. So, in this point of view, I would like to ask you and also President Lee, what do you think are the key ways to make the South Korea-U.S. alliance greater?
Well, I think it's great now. I feel very warmly toward South Korea. I will tell you that I have a lot of people in business that I deal with that are from South Korea. They love Trump because they feel I've saved. I think you would have had a nuclear war if I weren't. I think you would have had a nuclear war, North Korea and South Korea. I think it would have been a disaster. You're only 60 miles away from Seoul. They don't even need nuclear. They have their cannons, howitzers, and they have them buried in the mountain. You know what I'm talking about. And I think you would have had, if I didn't win that election, if Hillary Clinton, crooked Hillary, won that election, I think you would have had a nuclear war. It would have taken place, and it would have been horrendous for everybody, including them. It would have been very bad for them because we would have had to enter the picture, and we are the most powerful nuclear country in the world by far. Russia's second, China's third. China's going to catch eventually, 5 or 6 years. They're working to catch. One of the things we're trying to do with Russia and with China is denuclearization. And it's very important. One of the things I discussed with President Putin the other day, it wasn't just that, it was also other things. And I think the denuclearization is it's a big aim. But Russia's willing to do it, and I think China's going to be willing to do it too. We can't let nuclear weapons proliferate. We have to stop nuclear weapons. The power is too great. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask you further question about South Korea and U.S. alliance. I'm Anna from the Korea Times.
Good.
And I'd like to ask you about the trade deal that's on the table.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the shipbuilding industry, and President Lee mentioned about the manufacturing industry. And what other areas or sectors that you intend to focus on this trade deal? Because Korea is bringing in many investments and trade jobs as well. So I'd like to know the opinions of both, how to get a beneficial outcomes for both countries through this deal.
Well, we're going to get along great because we really sort of need each other. We love what they do. We love their product. We love their ships. We love a lot of the things that they make. And they love what we have. We're dealing with them on Alaska having to do with the oil. You need oil and we have it. So we have a big advantage in that way. We have more oil and gas and coal and energy than any other country in the world by far. No, for whatever reason, God was very good to us. He gave us the greatest. We didn't use it. We started to use wind. Wind doesn't work. They started to use solar panels that took over the land all over the Midwest, where the farmers said, what happened to my land? They'd have a 10-mile by 10-mile solar field that they couldn't farm. The most valuable farming land in the world, probably the most vibrant in the world. And they put solar plants all over the place. It's ridiculous. Big, massive black fields of solar. That all comes out of China. Or plastic, all comes out of China. But we have the greatest amount of energy in the world, and we're dealing with South Korea, as you know, in Alaska, and we're going to be making a deal, a joint venture with South Korea. Japan is involved also, very strongly involved. So we have Japan and South Korea, and we're actually the closest. It seems like quite far away, Alaska, but actually it's right up the little ocean, right up the little Pacific Ocean. It's actually pretty close, relatively speaking. But we have more oil and gas and coal than any other nation in the world by far, and we're going to use it. And that's the thing that South Korea, I think, most wants from us, I would think.
Would you go back to the DMZ to meet with the North Korean leader?
Say it.
Would you go back to the DMZ to meet with the North Korean leader?
I loved it. Remember when I walked across the line and everyone went crazy? Especially Secret Service, I would say they were crazy. And I looked into those windows, the windows, the glass, that you could only see if you looked direct, because there was all sorts of stuff. But I looked in and I saw more rifles pointing at me than you could. There were a lot of rifles in that building. The Secret Service was not happy. You know the buildings I'm talking about? The two blue buildings on each side. And I walked up the middle and I looked in the window and I saw more guns in that room than I've ever seen in my life. I looked at the other side and it was the same thing. And yet I felt safe. I felt safe because I have a great relationship with Kim Jong-un. I hope it stays that way. I think it will. I have a very good relationship. I understand him. I spent a lot of free time with him talking about things that we probably aren't supposed to talk about. And, you know, I get along with him really well. I think he has a country of great potential, tremendous potential.
This year or maybe next year?
Well, I'm meeting a lot of people. I mean, it's hard to say that, but I'd like to meet him this year. President Xi would like me to come to China. It's a very important relationship. As you know, we're taking a lot of money in from China because of the tariffs and different things. And it's a very important relationship. We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students. We're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow. It's very important. 600,000 students. It's very important. But we're going to get along with China. But it's a different relationship that we have now with China. It's a much better relationship economically than it was before. With Biden, boy, what he allowed that, I mean, they just took him to the cleaners. You know the expression? They took him to the cleaners. I'm sure they have an equal expression in South Korea, but they took that guy out for a ride like nobody's ever been ridden before. Terrible. But we have a very strong relationship, Howard, I would say, economically with China now, getting much better. They have to give us magnets. If they don't give us magnets, then we have to charge them 200% tariff or something, you know. But we're not going to have a problem, I don't think, with that. I think that's perhaps behind us. You know, China intelligently went and they sort of took a monopoly of the world's magnets. And nobody needed magnets until they convinced everybody 20 years ago, let's all do magnets. There were many other ways that the world could have gone. But so it'll take us probably a year to have them. We're heavy into the world of magnets now, only from a national security standpoint. But we have a powerful thing. It's airplane parts. They have many Boeing jets. You know, they had 200 jets that didn't fly. And I've sent them all, based on his word, I sent them all of the parts so their planes can fly. I could have held them back. I didn't do that because of the relationship I have. And their planes are now flying. You know, we had 200 of their planes were unable to fly because we were not giving them Boeing parts purposely, because they weren't giving us magnets. Therefore, we weren't giving them. But we have a much more powerful thing, that's tariffs. If we wanted to put 100%, 200% tariffs on, we wouldn't do any business with China. And, you know, it would be okay, too, if we had to. But the magnet situation, we have tremendous power over them, and they have some power over us with magnets. We're going to have a lot of magnets in a pretty short period of time. In fact, we'll have so many we won't know what to do with them. But you know the story. It's a very interesting history with magnets. And it really is because presidents, not being business people, they allowed that to happen. And they shouldn't have. But we have much more. I mean, look, in terms of playing the cards, we have much bigger and better cards than they do. But with that being said, I think we have a great relationship. I spoke to President Xi fairly recently, and at some point, probably during this year or shortly thereafter, we'll go to China. And I think we're going to see a magnificent sight. It's a great country.
Mr. President, on the National Guard, you and President Lee actually are planning to go to China. You mentioned either this year or next year. Could you please share more details about your plans going to China and also President Lee?
Well, maybe we'll go together. Do you want to go together? We can share a plane. We'll save energy. We'll save a little, you know, the ozone layer. Remember President Obama used to talk about the ozone layer, and then he'd fly to Hawaii to play around the golf in a 747.
Mr. President, would you accept the invitation, Mr. Lee? 중국에서 만약
I was sort of meant jokingly, but if you want, you can.
대통령하고 같이 가면 좋겠습니다.
I would like to go together with President.
Do I accept? He doesn't accept. If you want to go, I'm going to get special permission. I'm sure you can go. But we're going to have a great relationship with China. I mean, it's happening. You see it. It's happening. They have some cards. We have incredible cards, but I don't want to play those cards. If I played those cards, that would destroy China. I'm not going to play those cards.
Mr. President, on the National Guard, you talked a lot about Democratic-run cities and states.
Yeah.
Would you also consider sending the National Guard into red states and red cities that are also seeing high crime?
Sure, but there aren't that many of them. If you look at the top 25 cities for crime, just about every one of those cities is run by Democrats. And you know, one of the bad things they did, cashless bail, if you look back on time, when they allowed a murderer out that afternoon, you know, he'd kill somebody and then a couple of hours later he was walking the streets again, oftentimes killing again rapidly. Cashless bail is a disaster. You saw we had a news conference today on that. We're wiping it out in D.C., immediately wiping it out. It started in New York, I must tell you, and it's been a horrible thing for crime, especially violent crime. So we're going to end cashless bail, yes. Thank you.
When will you deploy to Chicago, and how long are you keeping troops here in Washington, D.C.?
Discussion. I really want to be appreciated. You know, when we go into a city and wipe out the crime, so D.C., it sounds so horrible. I'm embarrassed to say it in front of you because they don't have anything like this. Washington, D.C., sir, has not had a murder in 11 days. Now, he's saying that's a horrible thing to hear because they don't have murders for ever. But Washington, D.C., if you go back and check, it's been many years since we went a week without having a murder. Now we haven't had, and I would say that Washington, D.C. right now is much safer than Seoul. You know why? Because we have a friendly neighbor. We have more friendly neighbors. You have a different kind of problem. We all have different problems. But Washington, D.C. is a very safe city right now. People are going out to dinner. Restaurants are opening. Restaurants that were going to close are now going to stay open. Friends of mine are going out to dinner all the time. They didn't go out to dinner for 4 years. It went rampant during the Biden years. Just rampant. That's why Susie is very close to the mayor and has a lot of respect for her, but I view it maybe a little differently because the mayor would say that it's gotten better. For 30 years it's gotten better. No, it's gotten worse. And the worst day of all was when we just got to office for the second time. And it's in very bad shape. So the mayor shouldn't be saying that violent crime has been getting better. It's been getting much worse. And the day I took office, it was the worst. And we did some minor things, made it a little bit better, but then we said, look, we got to stop it because too many people are getting killed. And we have not had a murder in 11 days. It sounds crazy. I hate to say this in front of this gentleman who I respect, because they don't have murders for years. But we have not had a murder in 11 days. And that's going to go on for a long time. And there will be, I guess, it'll happen a little bit. But we have a very safe city. This is one of the safer cities right now in the country. And in a short period of time, it'll be like the border. Nobody came in through our border. For the last 90 days, 3 months, we had 0 illegal aliens from the Congo, from South America, from all over the world, from prisons coming in, pouring into our country. Nobody, not one person, and this is done by a liberal group, a liberal think tank. They do the work. Not one person has come into our country. Think of that. It's been amazing. And I didn't have to go back to Congress and ask. Biden could have done this by himself. I did. I said, close the borders. We had the great Tom Homan. We had Christie, as you know, Christie Noem, who did a fantastic job. She's doing a fantastic job. Pete Hegseth has been incredible with the, as I call it, the Department of War. You know, we call it the Department of Defense, but between us, I think we're going to change the name. You want to know the truth? I think we're going to have some information on that maybe soon. But I think because, you know, Department of Defense, we won the World War I, World War II. It was called the Department of War. And to me, that's really what it is. Its defense is a part of that. But I have a feeling we're going to be changing. I'm talking to the people. Everybody likes that. We had an unbelievable history of victory when it was Department of War. Then we changed it to Department of Defense. So that's a little thing, has nothing to do with your country, but it's something that I think you're going to be hearing about or seeing about over the next couple of weeks. Probably that change is going to be made over the next week or so.
Are there different Koreas, North and South, or is there one Korea waiting to be unified?
Well, I know it is two Koreas. I mean, there was one Korea. It was a very large country and a very powerful country. And it was a country that went to war with China. President Xi explained it. Went to war with China many times over the last 2,000 years. You had many, I think he told me 51 times. So I remember I went to President Xi. I said, we're having a problem with North Korea. Straighten it out, would you please? He said, well, we have been to war with them. And I think he said 51 times. But at that time, it was the whole of Korea. It wasn't, North and South. And after he explained it, I said, all right, not going to be that easy. I guess you're right. But, you had one Korea, and it was a very big, powerful nation. Now you have two big, powerful nations, but you have essentially a wall in between.
Mr. President, elaborate comments, the post and comments you made on South Korea earlier this morning, like raids on churches, going into U.S. military base, purge, revolution. How do you think about it? 이재명 대통령께도 질문드리겠는데요. 저희가 이제 빛의 혁명이나 내란 사태 극복하는 과정에서 이런 문제들이
Right, I heard from Intel.
그 부분 설명해 주시면 좋을 것 같아요.
I heard from Intel that there was a raid on churches. We're going to talk about that later. I haven't spoken about it yet, but when we meet. And, that would be too bad if that's the case. But I did hear that from Intel, that there was a raid on churches, closing some churches. So we'll talk about that later. I could ask you now if you want.
Mr. President, what conversation?
Wait a minute, please. If you'd like. Because it didn't sound to me like South Korea.
간단하게 말씀을 드리면 지금 대한민국은 아시는 것처럼 친위 쿠데타로 인한 혼란이 이제 극복된 지 얼마 안 된 상태고 그 내란 상황에 대한 국회가 임명하는 국회가 주도하는 특검에 의해서 사실 조사가 진행 중입니다. 물론 저의 통제하에 있지는 않지만 하여튼 대한민국 검찰이 하는 일은 팩트 확인, 팩트 체크인데 미군을 직접 수사한 게 아니고 그 부대 안에 있는 한국군의 통제 시스템이 어떻게 작동했나를 확인한 것 같습니다. 나중에 좀 더 자세히 설명드리도록 하겠습니다.
So it hasn't been long since Korea has overcame the political turmoil following the self-coup by the former president. Currently, there is a fact-finding investigation by a special prosecutor that was appointed by the National Assembly. And this special prosecutor...
Is his name Deranged Jack Smith, by any chance? They took him from our country. Deranged Jack. He's a deranged, sick individual. But go ahead. Go ahead, please. I'm only kidding. Maybe I'm not.
And that special prosecutor is not under my control. And so the special prosecutor is conducting a fact-finding investigation. And I would like to explain about what you said about U.S. bases. They did not conduct a search and seizure of American bases, but they looked into the chain of command and the control system of the Korean military.
Right.
And I would be happy to
That's okay.
explain about this more in detail
I'm sure it's,
during our lunch meeting.
I am sure it's a misunderstanding, but there is a rumor going around about churches, raiding churches. So we'll talk. I'm sure that's going to be worked out fine. Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr. President, what conversations have you had with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about what is going on in Gaza? There was a UN-backed report that said there was a famine in Gaza. Based on what you know and what you've been briefed on, do you agree with that?
So, I deal with Bibi Netanyahu quite a bit, and we had great success, obviously, in Iran. We knocked out their nuclear threat. That would have been a horror show having them have a nuclear weapon. They would have used it, too. We did very well there. Right now, they're talking about Gaza City. There's always talking about something. At some point, it's going to get settled. And I'm saying you better get it settled soon. You have to get it settled soon. And that means, nobody can forget October 7th. People forget October 7th. That was one of the most brutal. I've seen some terrible things, some brutal things. That was about as bad as it gets. And nobody can forget that. With that being said, it's got to get over with. It's got to get over with because between the hunger and all of the other problems, worse than hunger, death, pure death, people being killed, And, I'm the one that brought back the hostages, and I did it with that gentleman right there, Steve Witkoff, and with Marco. All of us, the whole team, we worked together. Even the trade people worked on it with us. And we brought back a lot of the hostages. Now we're left with, would you say 20, Steve, or would you say it's less than 20?
I hope it's 20.
He hopes it's 20 because some could be dead. That's what he means, I assume.
Yes.
So we had 20, but there's rumors that some could be dead. It's a terrible situation over there. Terrible, terrible situation. But it's coming to a head. It's coming to an end. We are sending, we sent $60 million of food over there just recently. And I don't even know if people know it. We distributed ourselves. We're giving a lot of food, spending a lot of money on food, getting it over there. We have a lot of food. We have a lot of oil, and we have the greatest farmers in the world. So we have a lot of food, but we're sending a lot of it over to Gaza, and we're feeding a lot of people. But with all of that being said, it's a lot of people to feed. And I think that we will have, I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to have pretty good conclusive ending. And it's a hard thing to say because they've been fighting for thousands of years. If you want to know, that's been a hotbed forever. But I think we're doing a very good job. But it does have to end. But people can't forget October 7th either.
Do you plan to attend APEC summit to be held in Korea?
A summit in South Korea?
Yes, South
yeah,
Korea in
November.
November.
I'd love to. Last time I spoke in front of your parliament, and I love doing that. Beautiful respect they had for our country, and a beautiful room. I remember how beautiful it was, and I enjoyed doing it. No, I could see going. I think I'm going for a trade meeting to South Korea pretty soon. You're hosting a trade meeting. So I can sneak away from that trade meeting and we'll go and do something for the president if he'd like me to do that, okay? But so we'll be going there fairly soon. You know about that?
If you attend, then it's a good chance to meet up Kim Jong-un again, or maybe Xi Jinping. Then how do you think of it?
You mean set them up together?
Yes.
That'd be interesting. We'll arrange a meeting between you and Kim Jong-un. Would you like that? That's a very tough question right now. I don't know where that question is leading. Anyway, look, I get along great with Kim Jong-un, and if whatever I can do having to do with South Korea and getting people together, you should get together, right?
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am. Beautiful
Yes.
smile.
Yeah. All right.
And then she'll turn out to be the worst one in the room.
Can I ask about Masca project? Masca project.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We're going to do that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do that very strongly. We're going to have a big, within a period of, it takes a while. That's a hard one to start. Some companies you can start easily. Shipbuilding's a tough one to start, but we'll be doing that. Now, with that being said, we make the best submarines anywhere in the world. We make submarines. We're 25 years ahead of anybody else in submarines. So we do that. We do that. But we really gave up the shipbuilding industry foolishly many years ago. But we're gonna start it up again. We're gonna be making our own ships again soon. Okay, how about one or two more?
Mr. President, have you been briefed on the search of John Bolton's home and office from Friday? Have you been briefed on
I
that?
have not been briefed. No, I read it just like you did. I was never a fan of his. I thought he was stupid. I thought he was, a guy that only wanted to go into war. He liked killing people. I thought he was essentially a bad guy, but I'm not involved in that. No, you'd have to ask Pam Bondi about that.
Are more raids like that coming, sir? Are more raids like the one on John Bolton's house coming?
More raids? I don't know. You'd have to ask the Department of Justice. They raided my house, I can tell you that. They did a big raid on my house. They took away everything that wasn't pinned down, and they took away some of that too. No, they raided Mar-a-Lago. They started that. These were bad people that we had in our government before. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They went into my wife's area. They went into my son's area, my young son. And what they did was a disgrace. But how did it work out? I see. We're in the overall. I guess it didn't work out too well for them, did it? They are bad people. They're sick. They're sick people. And they came in with their guns into Mar-a-Lago, like 98 people. I wasn't there. Fortunately, I wasn't there. but they are very evil, very sick people, that group. And if they would have won the election, this country wouldn't exist as we know it. This country would have been a failed country. And now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world by far. We are the hottest country in the world by far. Okay.
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. President Lee met with the Japanese Prime Minister before this summit.
That's good.
So, is there something to discuss regarding the cooperation among South Korea, U.S., and Japan?
I think so. Look, Japan is a great ally of us, and I had a little bit of a hard time getting you two together because you're still thinking about comfort women, right? Comfort women. That's all they wanted to talk about was comfort women. And I thought that was settled a few times over the decades. But there is an overlapping problem with that. Perhaps I'm wrong in saying it. Perhaps this isn't right, but the whole issue of the women, comfort women, very specifically, we talked, and it was a very big problem for Korea, not for Japan. Japan wanted to go. They want to get on, but Korea was very stuck on that. You understand? So I don't know. Perhaps you'd like to answer. It's a good question. It was hard getting Japan and Korea together because of what took place a long time ago. But Japan wants to do it, I can say. Korea is a little bit more tenuous, please.
지금 질문은 그 3자 협력에 대해서.
우리 한미일 협력은 매우 중요한 과제고 또 한미 관계의 발전을 위해서도 한일 관계가 어느 정도 수습이 돼야 됩니다.
Trilateral cooperation among Korea, the U.S., and Japan is very important, and better Korea-Japan relations is also important for the Korea-U.S. relationship as well.
그래서 대통령께서 한미일 협력을 매우 중시하고 계시기 때문에 제가 대통령을 뵙기 전에 미리 일본과 만나서 대통령께서 걱정하실 문제를 다 미리 정리했다 이렇게 생각해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
Because I know that President Trump, that you put emphasis on trilateral cooperation,
right.
I made a visit to Japan before coming to the U.S. to settle the difficult issues that we have.
Good. Well, Japan wants to get along very well with you, and I find them to be great people, great country, obviously. And they want very much to get along with South Korea. And you have something in common, you want to solve the North Korea problem. But Japan very much wants to get along with you, and I'm sure they will. I find the people that I deal with to be wonderful people, actually, as I do with you.
이번에 일본에 가서 이시바 총리를 만났을 때 그 전에 우리가 가지고 있던 여러 장애 요소들이 많이 제거됐다는 생각이 듭니다.
So when I visited Japan and met with Prime Minister Ishiba, I realized that many of the obstacles that existed between our two countries have now been removed.
Sure. During my term. We removed them during my term. There was an overlay a little bit, but we removed many of those obstacles during my term. And, if you look at Prime Minister Abe, who was a great man, he was a great friend of mine, and he was assassinated. But he felt very warmly toward your country, I can tell you that. And the current Prime Minister, who I've gotten to know very well, feels the same way. So I think you're going to have a great relationship with Japan. Steve, go ahead.
Just to close the loop on Gaza, is there a diplomatic push underway to try to get all this to end?
Oh, there's a diplomatic push.
No, is there?
There has been, yeah, sure. Right now, Steve, I would say very serious diplomatic push. Marco or Steve? Marco, do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, it's never stopped. We've always looked to find a solution there. Ultimately, as the president said, we want it to end. It has to end with no Hamas.
Steve, where are we?
I would say that we wouldn't be anywhere but for the president's truth last week, which was a statement to Hamas that they better get their act together and get to the peace table. But for that, it would have been all stalled. So, as usual, he is the man who moves it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
There, we just watched the President Lee Jae-myung and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump exchange remarks and hold a press conference. Soo-young, it was quite a long one. We've seen many Rok-U.S. summits, and you've been to one of them. Now, what was it like? What was your impression of the two leaders exchanging remarks?
Well, I mean, I would have to say we witnessed quite an incredible first exchange between the two leaders because, well, it looks like President Lee managed to get what could potentially be the first agreement between them, cooperation on North Korea. And how did that agreement, how was it drawn out? Well, we saw a complete 180 in the mood between the two leaders. So we earlier saw President Trump, with a frown, and there was certainly some chill in the air when they began talking to each other in the Oval Office. And while we saw President Trump get down straight to business, he wanted to talk about, trade. He said the US wants to talk about shipbuilding, and also he insinuated that he wants South Korea to buy US weapons, talking about how amazing they are.
Right.
But President Lee came in with a softer approach. So he began complimenting the decorations in the Oval Office, saying they reflect the greatness of the economy, the US economy, and really applauding President Trump for achieving that. And then he softened him up even more by saying that he is a peacemaker.
Right.
And he talked about all the different conflicts in the world, but settled on the Korean Peninsula. And that's where he came in with, talking about US-North Korea dialogue. And President Trump, he was very happy to hear that, and he was even smiling when President Lee mentioned, golf potentially in Pyongyang with Trump Tower there. So, yeah, the mood was completely reversed, basically, and Trump even touched upon his two favorite subjects, criticizing Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden.
Really, yeah.
So yes, we saw some good reports being established between the two leaders, and they agreed that they would work on North Korea together, potentially visit China together, which would be quite incredible.
Indeed.
And yes, we also saw them address some concerns that President Trump had before the summit with his Truth Social post, which President Lee's clarified quite a bit, and presumably I'll be elaborating on that later. But yes, it was quite a very dynamic and very, I would say, already quite fruitful summit that we're seeing.
Right. So the mood indeed lightened up as the time passed. Now, Mr. Ahn, what did you think of their first face-to-face interactions between the two?
Very interesting.
Interesting it was.
And very interesting. Actually, I noticed that when the Trump, I see that change of situation, because Trump used two hands when he shake here. Here, actually, he sandwich these hands. In Trump way, is showing respect. Because he used to use one hand only, using the pressurized
the show
other
power,
side,
yep.
like a French, president or something, or like a Japanese prime minister. But when you do two hands, really showing respect. Yeah, that's the really good sign. I thought, that would be a good sign. And plus, I think President Lee Jae-myung was very well prepared. I was very impressed how he, how much he phrasing from the Oval Office, and even using the gold. Like I thought he was writing a poem for love poem for Trump, something
almost poetic.
Yeah, I was very impressed, and he was very impressed, and I think he was well prepared. So he said, be a peacemaker, I'll be your pacemaker. That's really well written, well prepared, very impressive. And I think that what Trump really wants is money. Essentially. So the money issues, they will discuss it after the meeting. Conglomerate, Korean conglomerate leaders there, right? The CEOs, they will make a big, quite amount of the investment into U.S. I think that's good enough, for him, right? And big numbers will be good. And then plus they were showing. I'm very surprised that because before the talk we talk about North Korea and FTA, but what they actually, publicly saying about the issue Trump Tower, in Pyongyang, I think that's not unrealistic. I think it's possible. Yeah, I've been talking about this issue, like FTA with the U.S. and because that's the U.S. and Vietnam how they liberalize their economy and using the FTA. So I think that's maybe Kim Jong might be more interesting. I believe that Kim Jong cannot sleep tonight. So happy.
I'm sure he's watching.
Oh my God! Play again. So yeah.
North Korea did take a huge part of this press conference. Well, Professor Song, are you there with us?
Yes.
What did you think of what we just watched?
Yeah, as I watch over, I'm quite impressed, and I'm very delighted to see the not only the President Trump would like to attend the APEC meeting, and also he has a very shows very meaningful respect to President Lee, and also he has considered even meeting with Xi Jinping and together with President Lee, and also willing to attend the APEC at Gyeongju and in South Korea, and also maybe if the chairman of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, is invited to attend the meeting, and we have a very big and great momentum, not only economically but also politically. So economically, there is not much talk about it, but at least I become intrigued about the asking the South Korea to purchase the military armaments, such as, for example, B2B. But I would like to ask President Lee to purchase, if possibly, the more advanced equipment, such as B-1 or not B-1, the stealth bombers, but actually we don't need a B-2B because for South Korea that is long-range long-range bomber is not necessary at all. So I would like to say the current talk and the interview and press conference is really a successful one, I think, and well-prepared President Lee. And President Lee has even mentioned some pacemaker. That is like a peacemaker. Pacemaker is a rhyme, and that gives a very good impression, and it converts the ambience of the press conference. Is very good.
Right. Well, Mr. Ron, I'd like to turn to you. You know, President Lee took a very almost humble approach to, complimenting President Donald Trump, which he was obviously pleased in a very noticeable way. Now, we have to talk about China being one of the big topics. Trump may be meeting up with President Xi Jinping at the APEC meeting. He said it's possible, right?
Yeah, I'm very surprised, actually.
Right?
He publicly say he loved to go. Actually, he literally say he loved to go. So I guess he will go. He'll come, I guess, because he says so. And plus, I think there will be a great opportunity because that Kim Jong-un can join APEC if, Trump coming and
Maybe.
Xi Jinping coming. Maybe let's get together Gyeongju. But that might be very great, global, press coverage. I think that Trump really wanted, big coverage. Perhaps he tried to be, Nobel Prize, the Peace Prize, way, step ahead, I guess.
He does want that.
Yeah, I guess he really wanted because that his second term, and technically speaking, unless there is a constitutional amendment to U.S. Constitution, there will be no third term because in order to get a constitutional amendment is not easy. And very difficult, very technical, very tough job to do it. So I guess he might think that his second term, maybe now he want to try build up his legacy, maybe in the late years, so finish up, something like he want to remember how he remember in the future. Perhaps maybe that's why I think he's looking at some more peacemaking work, I guess. Yeah, I will expect to see that what happens.
All right, Professor Song, I'd like to turn to you for a follow-up question. Earlier, you mentioned, we talked about North Korea, China, APEC, all that, but they didn't really talk about money, related to economic cooperation, Moscow project, shipbuilding. Is that they will now go into their detailed discussions to talk about that money talk, right?
I believe that those discussions and negotiations will be held and sequentially because this needs of some details should be arranged and they must be agree with each other. So I think it needs a long time. So the money issues and economic issues should be arranged accordingly. And I think currently, the current situation, the outcome of this summit meeting will turn out to be very favorable to the negotiation process for the upcoming days. And also, we are going to have a very favorable conditions for the tariff, because currently we have a 15% of the tariff, but we are going to have some advantage in negotiation about the steels, aluminiums, and autos, and the semiconductors.
Right.
So to that regard, this is going to be a very good omen for the future tariff negotiation.
Right. We are seeing live footages of President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump still engaging in casual discussions before they go into that detailed summit discussions. Soo-young, now we just watched the press conference. What comes next after this summit for South Korea U.S. diplomacy, really?
Well, fortunately, President Trump gave us quite a hint of what kinds of interactions that we could expect next. And he mentioned that there's soon to be a trade meeting between Seoul and Washington, and he would be participating, thus headed to South Korea.
Right.
And he spoke quite positively about the last time he was in South Korea, saying that the people were very respectful. And he also mentioned that he seemed to insinuate that this could be around the time of APEC, because he said he'll do the trade things, but then he might slip off and help out President Lee with whatever he wants. So that obviously would be APEC. And he said he thinks he will go and he would like to go. And the possibility of meeting Kim Jong-un there, who knows? Kim Jong-un himself, he's known to be rather reclusive when it comes to multilateral meetings. And he's very shy, it seems, on doing multilateral leaders meetings, because he likes, in North Korea, they have this rule where leaders, it's just a one-to-one when it comes to summits. So we really aren't sure about that. But again, as mentioned, there might be some China diplomacy involved. We saw President Trump, inviting President Lee on Air Force One, it seems, to visit Beijing together. So yeah, maybe those 3 engagements will happen. But yeah, let's wait and see.
I do have to mention, no North Korean leader has, attended a multilateral meeting like APEC 2025 meeting, so who knows, but Mr. An, then you and Soo-young and of course Professor Song, that it's the summit between President Lee and President Trump is off to a good start, but they still have to go into their detailed discussions. What level of achievements would constitute a successful U.S. visit, really?
Well, I think this President Lee tried to separate the 2 issues, economic issue and non-economic issues. So because I think there are a very big gap in terms respect to their business negotiation. And that's a really different story. I think it's really President Lee and also the President Trump was, both parties realized that it's a very long way to negotiate, to get to agreement. So they tried not to try. I think they kind of to avoid any economic issues, rather focus on non-economic issues, something political issues, peacemaker, something like that. I think they deliberately do both leaders play drama, so that everybody happy. So I guess that's good news. But at least because diplomacy is a personal relationship, so as long as it seems that they have a good start, so I think that's good news. And also that, I think I'll be very excited to see what happens in the coming October at Gyeongju, right? That will be, and then if Trump can bring the, Xi Jinping and then, the Kim Jong-un to Gyeongju, that will be great news and headline news. And then another step closer to the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, that's very. I was very excited to see what happens.
Right. Well, so far we're not expecting any joint press conference or a joint statement afterwards. Professor Song, I'd like to ask you the same question that I asked Mr. An. What level of achievements do you think would constitute a successful U.S. visit by President Lee Jae-myung?
Yeah. This is really more than I expected, because observing the Republic of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, actually he was contempted and Ukraine President Zelensky's. So I'm really worried about the whether what kind of pressure the President Trump would pressure on the President Lee. But at least it seems to me that President Trump also make efforts to avoid some very sensitive military issues or some strategic flexibility. Not much talk about it has been talked between the President Trump and Lee at all. So even some correspondents and some asked a question about that, but actually Trump he just quickly answers and go to some other questions and political and some peacemaking issues. Well, that is also assisted by President Lee's actual efforts elaborate how to lead these press conference. So at least to me, it was a very impressive press conference and also very successful meeting with President Trump, and we have a very good prospect for the upcoming days for their even in the economic tariff negotiation and economic dealings and also political, and I'm really relieved.
A big relief for South Korea, right? Professor Song, thanks so much for connecting with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also, Mr. An, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your insight, as always.
Thank you. No problem.
And also our foreign affairs correspondent, Oh Soo-young. It was a pleasure to have you with us, Soo-young.
I wouldn't spend this time of day with anyone else, Tanya.
Thank you. And we also thank you for staying with us for a special coverage of the Rok-U.S. summit. This has been Kim Da-mi. Good night.